think we need to watch out about population collapse. Earth is going to face a massive population collapse over the next 20, 30 years. Massive. The biggest problem the world will face in 20 years is population collapse. I want to emphasize this. The biggest issue in 20 years will be population collapse. Not explosion, collapse.
You're more worried about underpopulation.
Oh, yeah. Earth is going to face a massive population collapse over the next 20, 30 years. Massive. And this is definitely, will civilization, the question of is civilization going to die with a bang or a whimper? This would definitely be dying with a whimper.
Yeah, we need.
The birth rate is very low.
Yeah, it's been dropping, right? It used to be 5-6 children per family. Globally, it's like 2.4. In the U.S., it's below replacement levels.
In most of Europe, Russia, Japan, Korea, Singapore, it's well below replacement.
But I would still say, when we spoke last about this, you're still a sort of abundance optimist that the world is getting better on many levels.
Yeah, I think the world is generally getting better. I have some concerns about advanced AI, that's a risk. If I say existential risks, I'd say super advanced AI is one, and probably the second biggest risk after that is population collapse.
Not asteroid impact.
No, the population collapse. The thing about demographics of birth rate is you know what's going to happen in 20 years because you know the birth rate last year. It takes 20 years for a person to grow up. So we know what the adult population is going to be 20 years from now because we know what kids were born last year. I think we have a serious issue with population collapse. That's far bigger than people realize. There's the social networks and everything. The social support networks were not really set up for a high ratio of retirees to workers.
Thank God we got robots coming in.
Yeah, the robots, exactly. We'll need those robots. But you don't want to have the youth effectively enslaved to take care of the elderly. Which is what would kind of happen if you have an upside down demographic pyramid.
I think demographics is a real issue where people are not having kids in a lot of countries. And very often they'll say, I'll solve it with immigration. Immigration from where? If Europe has an average, or many parts of Europe have an average of a 50 or 60, they're only at 50 or 60% of what's needed for replacement, or China for that matter. They're at half replacement rate. Where exactly are we going to find 600 million people to replace the ones that were never born? I think people are going to have to regard, to some degree, the notion of having kids as almost a social duty, within reason. Just if you can and you're so inclined, you should. It's otherwise civilization will just die, literally. The birth rate is strongly correlated to it's inversely correlated to wealth, inversely correlated to education, and correlated to religion. So the more religious you are, the less educated, and the poorer you are, the more kids you will have. And this is true between countries and within countries. In the US, the highest birth rate is in Utah, with the yeah. I think if you're saying what is threats to civilization, the lack of people is obviously a threat to civilization. We are going to face in the mid part of the century, and particularly the latter part of the century, a demographic implosion, the likes of which we haven't seen, including the Black Plague. The math is obvious. When did China ever experience a 50% reduction in its population? Never. Basically, pre-writing. Okay, because no one's ever written of such a thing. Even the Black Plague. Black Plagues would go through. I think that they might have marched a quarter, but never a half. And yet Spain, birth rate of 50%. It's as though someone went through and killed half the population, or at least of the future population. There's something better happen to turn this around, because otherwise you have an inverted demographic pyramid. And it's going to, at this rate, the only thing that'll be left will be robots. 3 generations of 50% birth rate, 50% replacement rate, gets you to 12% of where you were. And those poor 12%, all they're going to be doing is taking care of their grandparents. I mean, eventually there just won't be people at that rate. The other, I think religious extremism is obviously a concern. If that grows over time, particularly if it's a sort of a Luddite form of religious extremism, anti-technology, right, anti-science, right, exactly. And that's an obvious threat. I won't mention the third one.
I think we need to watch out about population collapse. This is somewhat counterintuitive to most people. They think that, well, there's so many humans, maybe too many humans, but that's just because they live in a city. If you're in an aircraft and you look down, they say, if you dropped a cannonball, how often would you hit a person? Basically never. In fact, there's stuff falling in from space all the time. Natural meteorites, old rocket stages, all the time. But nobody worries about it, because the actual, in fact, there's a good cool website called Wait But Why, and this guy Tim Urban, he actually just did the math, and all humans on Earth could fit in the city of New York on one floor. They don't even need the upper floors. So that's actually, the cross-section of humans as seen from Earth is extremely tiny, basically vanishingly small, almost nothing. So we need to watch out about population collapse. Low birth rate, I think, is a big risk. And it's also not exactly top secret. You can go look at the Wikipedia, birth rate. So, and this is actually this is definitely the civilization ends with a whimper, not a bang, because it would be a sad ending, where the average age becomes very high, and really the youth are effectively de facto enslaved to take care of the old people. This is not a good way to go end.
Do you have any new projects dealing with these topics that you've just addressed?
Well, I'm trying to set a good example on the kid front.
6 kids.
Yes. For now.